Goedemorgen en welkom bij het webinar Toekomstbestendig documentbeheer met Omnia. We hebben de volgende agenda voor vandaag. We hebben een korte introductie. Daarna zal Anders van Omnia het woord nemen en jullie mee gaan nemen hoe je met Omnia met name toekomstbestendig documentbeheer kan inrichten. Hier zien jullie de verschillende onderwerpen die zal gaan behandelen. En na afloop is er nog tijd voor wat vragen en discussie. Mochten er tussentijds vragen zijn, steek je hand op of stel de vraag even via de chat. Dan zal ik zorgen dat die vraag behandeld wordt. Goed, vandaag hebben jullie te maken met mijzelf en Anders. Mijn naam is Erik Bolte, accountmanager bij C-Solutions. Werk nu bijna een jaar bij C-Solutions en ik zal zo meteen nog iets meer vertellen over C-Solutions. Anders, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Eric. My name is Anders Fagerlund. I work for Omnia, which is a company that has its headquarters in Sweden. So I'm working out of Gothenburg. Happy to be here and join C-Solutions in this webinar. So I will come back shortly and talk a little bit more about document management.
All right. Anders, why do you think that when you go to implement a document management system, it's important to be future ready?
Yeah, I mean, the term future ready can, of course, be interpreted in many ways, but I think that a really sort of good way of viewing this is to be having a solution that is good for several roles. So it's good for administrators that's setting up the solution and implementing governance concept. It's good for authors and owners of documents, but also that it's easy to find documents and having a user-friendly solution. So I think those terms are important when talking about future-proof. And of course, we will come back to all of these bullets in just a little while.
Okay. Thank you, Anders. I will now switch back to Dutch. Nog even kort wat over C-Solutions. C-Solutions is een Microsoft partner en wij hebben ons tot doel gesteld om organisaties en met name mensen binnen die organisaties te helpen, te zorgen dat ze eigenlijk op elke plek over de juiste informatie kunnen voorzien, met elkaar kunnen samenwerken, met elkaar kunnen vergaderen. Met elkaar aan documenten kunnen werken. Dus dat is waar wij als organisatie voor staan. En wij doen dat met name met Microsoft technologie. C-Solutions zit in Bunnik. En wij zijn onderdeel van de Claresco groep. In totaal bestaat de Claresco groep uit bijna 100 mensen en allemaal werkzaam in Bunnik. Nou, dat in het kort over C-Solutions. Dan wil ik nu het woord geven aan Anders. Anders, you can take over the slideshow.
Thank you, Eric. So, can you please just tell me when you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great, thank you. So let's dive into the topic of future-proof document management. And all the examples that we will be talking about today are based on Microsoft 365 and the Omnia product. So as Eric showed you, we have a couple of bullets lined up here. First of all, we will talk a little bit about sort of where to begin and try to sort of draw a sort of high-level map of a solution. Then we will talk about some different types of documents, especially then in relation to Microsoft 365. So I've called this daily work documents, so the sort of everyday documents that we work with in sort of pretty much whatever we do, I would say. But then also documents that are more controlled and perhaps more important business documents that can be policies, guidelines, procedures, reports, and so forth. And finally, then we'll also have a look at some thoughts on how to make things easy to find information for the end user. But let's start here then with creating a document plan. And I would say that when starting the work with a new intranet or with a new document management solution, it's really important to start with some kind of information architecture. So we often use this model with 2 dimensions. The first one here is about if the information is treated or should be treated in a less or more formal way, a less or more controlled way. And the other dimension is then the size of the audience. Who is the target for this? Who is the target audience for this type of documents? Is it a wider target group, perhaps all employees, or is it a more limited one? So if we look at this from a really high level, I would say that what's really easy to sort of identify in a solution like this is information that we could call official information or organizational information. So these are, and now we are talking about documents. So these are the documents that the organization has made a decision that we need a policy within this area, or we need a work instruction for this activity, or we need a template for this type of documents. So in this area here, there's a decision within the organization to produce some kind of information or document. And then we have all the documents that we work with on sort of within a team of some kind. So this could be our office or our department or our project team and so forth. And if we compare the 2 areas here, you can see that, of course, then the official information here is very often more controlled. The teamwork information here is can of course vary. We can have information where we have very little sort of requirements on how to handle the information, and information also within, let's say, business projects that are perhaps more controlled. We often also talk about the area in this quadrant here as knowledge sharing. So this is when I share documents. I've created this great presentation. I've made a nice quotation or other types of documents that I want to share for someone else to use in sort of in their next presentation, as an example. So this information here can of course be really valuable, but there is no organizational decision behind it. I have decided myself to share with other salespeople this great quotation that I did. And then I should say that finally here that we also need to have an area for more sort of personal documents. So these are typically then sort of documents that perhaps no one else besides myself will see them. So my notes from a meeting, that could be an example. So this map here, I would say, is a really good foundation and start when driving document management initiative. So what we also can see here is that on the left side of this model, the requirements regarding handling documents are quite similar. So this is regarding it should be easy to create documents, perhaps based on templates. It should be easy to share documents with colleagues, easy to find documents, of course. We need access to templates, and in some cases we might have requirements regarding metadata, but quite seldom, I would think. So a limited list of requirements. But if we look at the documents that we will find on the right side, you can also see that we have, it's easy to do quite a long list here regarding approval, templates, metadata, traceability, versioning, retention, archiving, and so forth. So this will of course also be reflected when we move forward now to look at some examples from the various areas here. And as you can see also then, we have stated here that where the documents should go, so to say. So the personal documents will go into OneDrive, which is a service within Microsoft 365 designed for this purpose. When it comes to the team documents, you will be working with those in Microsoft Teams or maybe in the SharePoint team site. I would say that the knowledge sharing documents we would typically find in a community. So that could be a Yammer community or an Omnia community. And finally, then the more official documents, these will probably be handled in SharePoint, which of course then is a pretty wide description. So we will come back to that. And due to the fact that we have those demands or requirements regarding a controlled lifecycle, we are also using Omnia in those cases. So let's now start looking at what I've called here the daily work documents. So these are the documents on the left side of the map. And let's start with the personal documents that goes into OneDrive. So in this case, the example is based on that I have now arrived at the start page of our intranet. So you can see the app launcher up here, which then can take me to various applications within Microsoft 365. But also you can see that I have a little document icon here. And by clicking that icon, I can start creating documents from wherever within this intranet solution that we are now using for the examples. And here you can see then that I'm starting now to create a document here. I have chosen a template. I've provided a title for the document here. I've chosen to put this in OneDrive and in this folder here. So the document here is my notes on the new sales process. So these are notes that I've sort of taken just for my own memory or for my own sake. And I'm putting it in OneDrive, and there probably in this case, no one else will actually see this presentation. It's just for myself. So when arriving in OneDrive, it might look something like this, and this is then the end user's sort of responsibility to define a structure, perhaps based on folders. The possibility here is also present then if I want to create further documents. And also it's really easy in OneDrive to share documents with colleagues. So if I have documents that are personal, that I don't think anyone else is interested in this document, I will put it in OneDrive. But if a colleague asks me for, do you have any notes on the new sales presentation? Well, you saw that we created that document, and I can then share that document with those colleagues. So that is, of course, sort of flying over OneDrive and an example there. And then we have the team documents in Microsoft Teams. And I mean, since the rise of teams and the growth of Teams has been so sort of skyrocketing, I'm sure that you are well familiar with the Teams interface. So in this case, we are in the Gothenburg office team. We are in the files tab, and I'm working with some documents shared within this team. So if I want to share documents with certain people here, the most common action here would probably be to invite those people to the team to make the documents available for them. And as you might know, you have the possibility to also open this document library that we are looking at now, also in SharePoint, because the document library is actually sitting in SharePoint. So that is the back end. So if we open this in SharePoint, it would look something like this. So quite similar to what we have seen before from the example solution. And you can see then the possibility here also to create new documents from the approved templates within the organization. So creating documents here based on templates looks, of course, just similar to what I showed you before when we started creating a document from the start page there and put it in OneDrive. So it's the same here. I've chosen a presentation, I've chosen a folder or where it should go, and I've given it a title. And in this case, it's a document shared within the group, the team members here. And finally, then, of the sort of daily work documents, we have the knowledge sharing documents. And as I said, we can do this in either a Yammer community or an Omnia community. So now we have entered an Omnia community. This community is for knowledge sharing within this topic here, better sales. So I would probably find members in this community to be working with sales and marketing. As you can see here, we have some discussions in the community. We have some articles and also documents. So what I'm looking at here are the most recent updates. But as you can see over here, we also then have the possibility to look further for articles, discussions, or documents. And when it comes to documents, I mean, what I'm sharing here in the community is then my decision to share it. And today we're going to share a document. So we will just click share document here. I'm now going to upload a document to put that document really in this community context. This will of course then provide a context for the end user. So when someone finds this document, it will be easy to sort of identify what type of document this really is. So I'm also putting in, besides the file here, also a little summary. I'm putting in perhaps a couple of tags to categorize the document. So now I've uploaded here the document lessons learned from the new sales process. So when we started out with the document in OneDrive, it was sort of my notes on the sales process. Then we had a shared document also about the sales process that was shared within a team. And this is again then a document that I'm sharing. These are my lessons learned when working with this new sales process. As you can see in the community, there's a possibility to rate documents and also comment on documents, as you can see there. You can also, of course, in this view, click the arrows here to sort of scroll through the document to take part of it before you perhaps download it and start using it for your own purposes. And when the document is uploaded, it's also available here on the start page of the community. This is now the most recent update, of course. So there we have the OneDrive, we have Teams, we have the SharePoint team site, and we have the community. So different places and different types of documents. So what we need to do here on the left side of that map I draw before, the map of the solution, is then of course to introduce end users to what type of document should go where in the Microsoft 365 solution. So let's now turn to the right side of that model and have a look at controlled documents, as I have called them here. And controlled, this means documents where we have put in place a controlled life cycle. So, I mean, we talked when I showed you sort of this 4-quadrant map. We talked about that this could be official documents. So typically then perhaps policies and instructions and reports and so forth, but also that it could be documents from teamwork. More controlled teamwork documents are probably produced in well, some kind of business improvement project, or maybe that we have a department or office that are creating some sort of ISO certification related documents for that office. So what we will do then to start working with control documents is to look at what types of control documents do we have. So when you do that, you will probably find that we have plenty of different document types that we have sort of requirements regarding how these are handled over their life cycle. So for each of the document types, we will now need to do some kind of definition. So we will look at what properties do we need for corporate policies, or what templates should be used for project reports, or what about the approval workflow for work instructions. So here, the terms that you see in this slide here are examples, but still I think those are pretty relevant examples. But if you want to add further aspects when analyzing document types, you can of course do that. So when we have done that activity, we will come out with a number of sort of defined document types. And for each of the document types, we have also stated what templates do we need for producing these documents, and also what metadata or properties should go onto these documents. We have also defined the life cycle. So from creation, working with the document here, and then perhaps getting some feedback from colleagues, getting the document approved, making the document sort of published and available for colleagues, perhaps doing a review after a year, perhaps having some archiving guidelines and so forth. So this can then be sort of a document that lives for several years and several editions here before it's perhaps sort of archived or terminated. And also, when creating this solution overview, we need also to decide on where should end users find those documents. What is the best way to make it really easy for end users to find corporate policies, to find work instructions, to find product documents, and so forth. So here we have the solution overview, and this is I would say mainly for the control documents, but could of course also include other types of documents. So let's now look at a couple of examples. And first of all, since we now have made this solution map and we have made definitions of the document types, we must now first of all implement that governance concept, as I have called it here. So we are now looking at, we are now administrators first of all, and we are working in the admin console in Omnia. So here you can see I've started now to create, first of all, I'm working with properties here, and I'm creating some property sets. So these are sets of properties. In this case, you can see an example here, 4 properties that we put together as a document set. And this document set here is connected to the document type product document. So for each document type, we have now also a connection to properties. And we have a centralized handling of those properties. Centralized handling we must also have for templates. So you can see that I have created a number of templates here that will be used for these important documents. And finally, then we also need to input the definitions regarding the document types. So you can see that I have created here a number of document types. And if we look at one of these, in this case, it's some document type called Office document, you can see that I'm here creating sort of inputting that definition. So regarding the properties, regarding the templates, regarding how to handle appendices, regarding revisions of the document, defining the publishing workflow, defining a review interval, defining who should be notified on certain tasks and so forth. So what I'm doing here is pretty much sort of inputting the rules for how to handle these documents. Let's now switch hats here and become authors of these important documents, or maybe owners of the documents. But before we do that, we need to just distinguish here a difference between the control documents that we are working with now and what I before called daily work documents. So first of all, then the daily work documents are put in one place and handled there. So you put the document in OneDrive or in Teams or in the community, and then you can share the document with people. But the document, if they want to take part of that document, they need to sort of access that Teams group or that community to access it. But in this case, with the control documents, we are instead working within a team. So that could be in Microsoft Teams or in SharePoint. So let's say that we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people working with policies within HR, as an example. And then when we have approved the documents, we will make the documents available within a certain context. So in this case, we can say that people who are owners and authors of documents will be working with the documents in one place, but end users will consume and find the document in some other context. I will, of course, show you examples of this as we go forward. So again, we arrive at the start page of our intranet here. And in this case, we are then accessing the solution within our browser. So I can navigate to a team where I'm working with control documents. And in this case, it is the management team here. So I arrive at a SharePoint team site, and as you can see in the menu here, we have a term, a label here in the menu called control documents. So here I will be working with these important documents. I will be working with them in draft version, and when the document has been approved, it will instead show here in the view that we have here called published. So here I can then create new documents. So what I do then is very similar to what you already have seen when creating documents based on this sort of step-by-step wizard. So I can create, let's say, a policy here. So I've chosen a document type, I've chosen a template, I'm providing a title for the document and some metadata. And then I can go ahead and create the document. So there we have the document. And as you see, we in the drafts tab here, we are now working with this sustainability policy. So let's say that I've been working with this document for a week or so, and I'm closing in to being complete. So then I want to ask a couple of colleagues here, can you take a look at this new policy and provide some feedback? So there's a message here for all of these 3 people that I'm now inviting. So when I'm clicking send here, the collect feedback workflow will kick in. So the people I've asked here will receive a task, and when they have completed that task and provided the feedback, I as an author will then be notified, and I can handle the feedback in a structured way. The next step then is, of course, to do some changes to the document based on the feedback, and then start the approval workflow instead. And of course, this workflow is then aligned with the rules that the administrator set out. So in this case, you can see it will be converted to PDF. I can unclick that if I want. I also have the possibility here to notify people. So in this case, I'm notifying a group of people about a new policy. So when the new policy is published, these people will be notified. And as you can see here, I have also asked for a read receipt. So I want to follow up that everyone in this group actually have taken part of the document. So what happens then is that anyone who then is the approver will receive a task, a notification here in the notification panel, or as an email. So I can see here then I've received this task to approve the document. If I click to sort of carry out this task, I can then take part of the document and its properties and approve the document. And once it's approved, you can now see then that the sustainability policy that we provided, that we have created now, is now in the published view here. So the document is approved and published and also then available for my colleagues. So in just a little while, we will see where it becomes available in this case. But before we look at that, let me just show you also that everything we just did with sort of this new policy document, we can also do this in Teams. So if you prefer to manage document in Teams, you can do that. As you see, we are in the product development team here. And we have this controlled documents tab. So here I'm working on this document ideation guidelines. And I'm working with the same type of workflows available here, sending for feedback or comments, the publish and approval workflow. And when the document is approved, it will show in the publish tab. So managing documents, authoring and ownership of documents can be managed in Teams or in SharePoint. I will also have a number of reports as an administrator or as a document owner. So I can here follow up on statistics. So if I want to get sort of the full picture, I want to track any control document that we have within our organization, I can do that here. So I can see that we now have 136 control documents. I can of course click the number here to review the full list. I can also check other types of reviews. So for instance, documents that are past review date, we have a report for that here. And a pretty common scenario is also then that I have a need for working with several documents at a time. So here I can do document bulk updates, and a common scenario here is that the person is ending his or her employment with us. So I have now searched for any document where this person is the document owner, and I marked a couple of documents here that I will now transfer to a new document owner. That could of course also be other types of metadata on the document that I can work in this sort of bulk fashion. So let's now finish off with having a look at the user interface. So making it easy for end users to find these controlled documents. So let's switch to this environment here. This is the same environment that we have been looking at in the examples before. So I arrive at the start page, and what I as an end user now expect is to find all these important documents that I have been talking about, but in a relevant context. So let's start off with that policy that we just created. So if I'm looking for a policy, I will probably start either by searching or navigating. And if we start by navigating here, we have sort of the mega menu concept in place here to provide an overview of different types of content. And as you can see here, we actually have a page here called corporate policies. So no matter who or what function is responsible for creating the policy or for maintaining and developing the policy. From an end user perspective, it will show here. So on this page, you can see that we are sort of describing how we work with policies, and you can see the policies to the right here. We created the sustainability policy, but here you can also see there's a quality policy, environmental policy, and so forth. And of course, it's possible that these policies are handled by different teams. So it could be HR, a production team. Perhaps we have sort of a quality and environment department or something like that. But still, from an end user point of view, we have collected all the policies and are showing those here. So this is a simple example on how we can sort of gather documents that are related and presenting them in a good way. Here you can also see that besides taking part of the document, I can also, as an end user, take part of the document card. So this would hold then any information like metadata, document ID, what edition is this, who is the owner, when was it approved, information like that. And we have also implemented here the possibility to provide feedback on the document. So if we want our employees to help us with improvements, feedback on this type of documents can be a good idea. So let's now look at a different type of document. And in this case, we can say that let's look at work instructions. So if we again then turn to the navigation, we can see that here we have a section on the processes within our organization. And here you can see that we have several units or business areas or companies, and we are going to dive into the Alameda Bikes company here. So when we arrive at this page, you can see that we have the main process here, and we have some information on this page that is probably and hopefully relevant to the end user. The process map can be used for navigation. So if I want to sort of dive into a certain business process, perhaps even a certain activity within that process, we are now looking at the envisioning phase of the process, the project model on how to drive product development projects. So here we have a description of this activity. We have the process owner, information on this person here. We have the possibility to follow this process, add it to my list of sort of favorite processes. I can send feedback and sort of post issues regarding the process here. And as you can see, I can also find documents here. There we actually have the ideation guidelines document that you also saw was created in the Teams example before. So this is also then a good way to sort of display documents within this relevant context. All the work instructions regarding the envisioning phase of the project model is gathered here. So easy to find from this sort of a logical end user perspective. Let's take one more example regarding finding documents in the navigation. And in this case, let's go to some product information here. So here we have a catalog of all our products. As you can see, it's mainly bikes. We have some helmets here as well. So let's say that I'm now looking for a document, but I'm actually not really sure what document I'm looking for. So let's say that we instead here should sort of search or filter to find, first of all, a bike model and then documents related to that. So let's say we have a customer that would like to purchase a city bike, and this customer wants to have a silver bike. The wheel size should be 26 inches. So now we have narrowed down the product catalog to only show products that correspond to these requirements. So I can of course go on here and say that I have further information about brakes or saddle types or so forth, but you get the drift there. So let's look now at one of the products. And what we can see here then is, yeah, this product could very well suit the customer that we are talking to. So since the customer asked for some kind of brochure or leaflet, let's look at what documentation we have available here. Marketing documents and technical documents. So probably a marketing document. And here we then have this sort of leaflet for this model. So I've now found a controlled product document, but not by sort of exactly knowing that this was the leaflet that I was looking for, but instead sort of using the concept of how we can make it easy for end users to find documents. Okay, let's also have a look at search. So in this solution, we have first of all then something here called a quick search. So quick search is when I'm looking for something, sort of a colleague that I already know, maybe news articles recently published or documents that I recently work with. I will hopefully find these in quick search. But there's also a possibility here to expand and go to advanced search. And in advanced search, you can see that we have some search categories here that can be used to sort of filter out what information I'm actually looking for. So we have the search result here, and we also then have some refiners here. So if I was looking for a person to ask something, maybe about pricing, I can do it this way to use the refiners here. But let's have a look now instead on these search categories here, because then you can see that we now have a search category that will only show what we in the map before called official information. So here you will typically then find reports, plans, work instructions, project directives, policies, office documents, product documents, and so forth. So any control document and any information that the organization has decided that we need a policy on this, we need an instruction on that, and so forth. So easy to identify that this is the information that I know is sort of that I need to follow, so to say. We then have a tab here regarding communities. So in this tab, I will only find documents and information that has been posted for knowledge sharing purposes in communities. I have teamwork information here, and in this case, I will then find information from projects and departments that I'm working with in the team, and also then we have the personal documents here in my files. So then you can see that the search categories here is directly corresponding to the map that I showed you before. And that is, of course, also then a good idea when it comes to providing a good user experience. So I return to the slide. So the summary here is actually just going back to the map. I think what you have seen now is that on the left side, we have the daily work documents, how we can work with these within certain parts or services within Microsoft 365. We have seen how to work with the official documents, and we have also seen how we both then can combine living up to the requirements, fulfilling the requirements when it comes to how documents should be managed over time, but also then how we can present this in a good user experience. So having said that, thank you very much for being with us today, and back to you, Eric.
All right, thank you, Anders. What would be from your side when a company would start implementing their document management system in regards to being future ready, what would be your most important takeaway from this presentation?
I think that the most common pitfall when implementing document management solutions is that you don't spend enough time and thought on doing the document plan. So I think that a good way to start here is by talking to someone who is really capable within this area to get help with the information architecture and creating this high-level map and also that solution overview that I showed. So I think this is really important. This will, if you do that in the right way, you will probably have a really good chance to be successful with your solution. But if you rush in that part of the initiative of the project, you will probably have to pay a price later on. So I think that is the most important takeaway.
Okay, thank you. And that's a nice bridge to the work that we do at C Solutions in the Netherlands, because we can of course help companies doing all the pre-work and getting let's say the roadmap ready. So that's well, an important job for us as C Solutions. Thank you, Anders. I will now switch over to Dutch. Ja, iedereen die dit webinar heeft bijgewoond, hartelijk dank voor jullie aandacht. Hopelijk heeft het jullie geholpen. Mochten er vragen zijn, dan kunnen jullie mij bereiken via info@csolutions.nl. Daarnaast hebben we ook nog een QR-code. Inmiddels is iedereen in Nederland wel bekend met QR-codes. Maar als jullie deze gebruiken, dan komen jullie bij een korte enquête over dit webinar. En we zouden het erg op prijs stellen als jullie deze zouden willen invullen. Nou, hierbij wil ik iedereen hartelijk danken nogmaals voor de aandacht. En heel veel succes met het werk. En ik hoop jullie in de toekomst weer te spreken. Fijne dag.